Crimmigration. You can pretty much garner from that title what that suggests, right? That is an overlap of our criminal system with our immigration system. Now, our Constitution, the foundational document of our country, right, doesn't actually say who has power over immigration, whether it's the federal government or the states. Our Supreme Court decided that it was the federal government. And that power comes along with the fact that we're one country. We're one nation. We have a national citizenship. I mean, the play brought up this issue, right? Do you have rights? Well, the answer for people who are not citizens is they have rights when it comes to being in the country and being subjected to things like criminal prosecution and things like that. Yes, they have rights. When it comes to our immigration process, them being allowed to be here, when we'll tell them they can stay, when we tell them they can leave, their rights are greatly restricted. The Constitution, the Bill of Rights, right, doesn't operate the same way when it comes to our pure immigration system. Our federal immigration law is civil law, which means that what we're doing is we're regulating behavior, but we're not in the business of punishing behavior. Right? That's probably the foundational distinction. We've expanded the kind of criminal offenses for which you can be deported. That we've increased the numbers of those that lead to our federal civil law saying you're going to be deported for that. And we've made it absolute by saying, and we don't really care how this impacts families, your life, right? We don't care if you can argue that, in fact, you've lived here for a long time, it was your only criminal offense, your family is going to be without their major breadwinner, right? An increasing move to making the deportation absolute, right? No argumentation for consideration of other factors, right? Another feature of the crimmigration process, and it certainly is brought up in this play, is an increasing use of criminal law enforcement mechanisms, right? Raids, right? Armed officers. Detention. The father was deported fairly immediately. The mother was detained, was in custody, and had a separate hearing. That suggests that the mother is being treated differently, perhaps because there was some kind of criminal offense in her background. It could be extremely minor. It could be something as simple as shoplifting, right? But again, with the crimmigration process, right? Increasing criminalization, right? That minor criminal offense that could have happened years ago now winds up with her being treated as if she's a criminal in the federal process. And the consequence of her being deported without really any opportunity for explaining, I have 2 children, and there's nobody else to take care of them. Right? Those factors just get pushed aside with this criminalization. Today, the single largest category of federal prosecution is for immigration offenses. Not drugs, not racketeering, not fraud, immigration offenses. Last year, almost 100,000 people were criminally prosecuted for engaging in some sort of immigration offense, which is the big ones, obviously, are re-entry after being deported or entering in a time and a place other than the federal government allows you to enter the country. What you're also seeing is the states are getting involved. States are passing their own statutes, right? To sort of, they're not passing criminal statutes that directly address immigration. They can't, right? They cannot get involved in immigration specifically. What they do is they criminalize conduct that immigrants are going to engage in, using false documents to get work, right? Trafficking people. Because it's federal and civil, a lot of the constitutional protections don't apply, right? You don't have the right to an attorney in a federal civil immigration proceeding. As I said before, the 8th Amendment prohibiting cruel and unusual punishment doesn't apply. Equal protection doesn't apply. Due process is limited, right? So you've got this basic question. If you're moving to this criminalization of it, right, then what about the constitutional protections that ought to go along with that? And the second question is, how much do we want our states involved in it? If this was a federal process because our Supreme Court said this concerns our national identity, right? The overarching policy concern is, are we going to wind up with a patchwork of 50 different states deciding, right, immigration questions when we should have a decision nationally about how our immigration system ought to work. The total U.S. population, about 12% are foreign-born. But they have 23% of the children being born in our country. Right? In other words, foreign-born people tend to have more children. So while it's a fairly small portion of our populace that's potentially at risk for being deported, it's actually a larger group of U.S. citizens that are going to be impacted by how criminalized the system becomes.